Berlin. You know, when you think about it, this is a city that's been burned, bombed, divided, and just utterly humiliated. By all rights, it shouldn't even be here. It should have disappeared from the map like a dozen times over, and yet, it's still standing. So how on earth did it do it? Let's dive into this incredible story of survival.
It's a pretty heavy question, isn't it? How many times can a city die and still come back? But for Berlin, this isn't just some thought experiment. It is the central question of its entire crazy existence. This is a city that's more than a place. It's a survivor, a witness, and honestly, a profound warning for all of us.
Okay, so to really get how Berlin survived everything thrown at it, we have to go way back to the very beginning. We're talking about a city that was literally born from mud, but was forged by pure, unrelenting ambition.
So picture this, medieval Berlin, and I want you to forget the grand capital you're thinking of. No, this was a small, fragile little trading post on the banks of the River Spree. Think wooden homes, muddy streets, a really humble, vulnerable start for a city that would one day, believe it or not, shape the entire world.
But that fragility? Yeah, that didn't last long. Prussian ambition came along and completely transformed the place. Suddenly, Berlin becomes this center of military and political force, built on discipline, order, and just an iron will. It literally became the beating heart of a rising, formidable power.
And that right there, that captures the whole paradox of Berlin, doesn't it? It's a city that was meticulously, obsessively built on structure and order. And yet, its destiny was to face some of the most unbelievable chaos the world has ever known.
And that sense of order was about to be tested like never before. As we jump into the 20th century, Berlin enters this period of just breathtaking genius, but it's completely shadowed by this impending disaster. The city was, well, it was basically dancing on the edge of a volcano.
Man, the sheer energy of 1920s Berlin, it was intoxicating. It was this absolute fever dream of creativity. You had radical new art movements popping up everywhere, legendary jazz clubs that went all night, a kind of personal freedom that was unheard of. But here's the catch. This whole cultural explosion was fueled by the very things that would tear it all down. Absolute political chaos, economic desperation, and this terrifying instability just simmering right under the surface.
And this quote just nails the feeling perfectly. The city was more alive than it had ever been, for sure, but it was this frantic, unstable kind of life. It was like the heartbeat of a patient just moments away from a massive heart attack. Disaster wasn't a question of if, it was a question of when. And then, silence. Just like that, the music stopped, the art was burned, the freedom, it just vanished. The vibrant, chaotic pulse of the city was completely extinguished from the Nazis' seized power. The party was over.
By 1945, that dream was long gone, replaced by an absolute nightmare. Berlin, which had been the command center for so much destruction, became the target of it. And what was left? Rubble, ashes. That's it, a ghost of a city.
But you know, even from those ashes, a new conflict was already starting. Berlin wasn't just going to be rebuilt. It was going to be fractured, becoming the literal physical front line of the Cold War.
The city was just split right down the middle, along ideological lines. So on one side, you've got West Berlin, controlled by the Allied powers. It was basically an island of capitalist freedom deep inside enemy territory. And on the other, you've got East Berlin, under the Soviet sector, representing total communist control. Two different worlds in one city, separated by nothing more than a line on a map.
This timeline really shows how that line on a map became a brutal physical reality. After that first division in '45, the tension just kept building and building until 1961, when the wall went up, literally overnight. It trapped millions of people. And for almost 30 years, it just stood there until its unbelievable, spectacular fall in 1989. And you have to understand, this thing, it was so much more than just concrete and barbed wire. It was a living scar on the city. It cut right through families, friendships, and the very heart of what it meant to be a Berliner. The wall didn't just divide streets, it divided souls.
And then, November 9th, 1989. After decades of tension and this feeling of hopelessness, the impossible happened. People just started streaming through. Hammers came out, and in one single unbelievable night, history just cracked wide open. This was Berlin's rebirth.
So, what kind of city grows from that much trauma? Well, it becomes a city that's defined by its scars. A city that understands that the only real way to move forward is to never stop looking back.
Modern Berlin has this really unique relationship with its past. It doesn't just bulldoze the ruins, no, it preserves them as memorials. It builds these huge public monuments, not to celebrate victors, but to remember the victims. And somehow, out of all this brutal history, this thriving, multicultural, creative hub has emerged. All of it built on this foundation of an honest, and I mean really honest, unhidden history.
And all of this points to one big idea, really: confrontation. Where other cities might try to bury a past this traumatic, Berlin puts it right on display for everyone to see. It gets that memory isn't some burden you have to carry. It's actually a source of incredible strength.
And that, right there, is the ultimate lesson of Berlin. That's why it's still here. It was destroyed, not once, but over and over again. And yet, every single time, it chose to rebuild, not just its buildings, but its very identity. It survives because it remembers. Simple as that.
Which leaves us with this one last thought to chew on. In a world that is so tempted to just forget its mistakes and move on, what can we learn from a city that absolutely refuses to? What does a city that remembers everything have to teach the rest of us about the future?